we welcome in Bryan Munson of Husker Online. Bryan, how's it going? Long time no chat. What's up in your world?
I was just laughing at that. The little who was that talking there about having to maybe be restrained and being 48 years old and walking away, and who was that?
That wasn't me.
Was it Jay? Was that Jay? Was it Foreman?
Well, about being able to walk away from help me.
No, did you guys hear the promo from the Colorado game about somebody telling him that he might have to get into a fight or whatever?
Oh, that was me.
Yeah. We know that guy.
That was me. Yeah.
Oh, that was you, Strick?
Yeah. I listen. I had to say why I didn't go. Like, I actually had opportunities to pull tickets, and I knew that if I went in there. But let me just give you a quick example. I went to the Oklahoma game last year, right? And I almost wanted to pull my hair out, and I don't have hair. And so I knew that they were, Colorado fans are nasty. And I knew that if I went in there and it got frustrating and we ended up coming up short, somebody could have said the wrong thing, bumped into me wrong or did something, and then I would have ended up, possibly in the paddy wagon. So that's why I left it alone.
I got a really nice offer to go as well. 45-yard line, 40 rows up behind the Nebraska bench, and I was in the so it was my birthday, and maybe that's the reason why I was
happy birthday.
Belated birthday.
Was 48, and I turned 49 on Saturday.
I'll be 50.
48's in my. You're 50.
I'll be 50. I'll be 50 in November.
Okay, but 48's in my rear view, and I was maybe shedding a tear over that. But I've done the same, and I'll tell you what, along the same lines as like Colorado fans, them fans in Lubbock, they're not much better. They're not much better, man. I'll tell you what. Yeah, no, Lubbock was rough. I had a couple rough trips out there, and the 70-10 game in particular, that there was almost paddy wagon time for old Bryan. Trust me, that was a bad night.
Oh, wow. Well, we're glad you didn't make it in the paddy wagon and you're still here with us. Thank you for joining us today. Let's talk Huskers, man. Get him. We're about to jump on you and see if you can fight back right now.
Yeah, Bryan, let's start with this. The simple fact that Nebraska's 0-2. They have their first home game coming up this weekend. What's the message for this coaching staff to the recruits that are going to be in town? Is it still, hey, here's the vision, here's how we see you, this is how we develop you? Is it trying to instill a little bit of the savior complex? Hey, you're the piece we need. What's the messaging like for the coaching staff with recruits in town for official visits this weekend?
Well, I mean, to me, you still have a very positive kind of way of framing up the Minnesota game. I mean, Nebraska should not have lost that game. I mean, I don't know how radically different things would be right now if Nebraska won that game 13-10 versus losing it 13-10. But I think that the thing about right now with these Huskers is that they are battle tested. They have been to a couple of places, played on some national television. They have had a chance to let the butterflies show. They've had a chance to let maybe even like the surroundings get the best of them a little bit. Maybe that's what was under the hood with Jeff Sims a little bit. Maybe that's what's gotten to the players in a couple of these other penalties and other bad situations with procedures and just kind of things where you're kind of caught up in that moment. I think Nebraska is better for having gone through what they've gone through. I know that people are probably out there kind of shaking their heads and rolling their eyes a little bit, because I do believe that there are still things that kind of exist in front of this team that I don't see how this isn't going to be an ongoing issue. But as far as the recruits this Saturday, I basically would tell them this: Nebraska didn't open up with a couple of cupcakes, and there are other teams around the country that do. Nebraska is going to be better off for what they've gone through. They're going to demonstrate that now, kind of moving forward. They got an excellent opportunity to kind of get a chance to maybe get that win on Saturday night. Although NIU is still a very good football team, and I think it's going to be one of those things where obviously the work is in progress. They see those guys that are in the class now have got to see their futures. They've got to see that there's going to be a plan for them, that there's a way for them, a path almost to like get on the football field, because obviously they want to be part of this solution. They want to be part of the answer. They would be one of the reasons why they didn't lose those games, earlier on in the season. So Nebraska has to tell those guys that basically nothing has changed. That they're still moving forward. They wish they would have got one of those two or both of those games. And now the sights and the focus are on the rest of the season and getting those guys to Lincoln as soon as possible to help them, completely, keep this turnaround going.
One big target for Nebraska this cycle still is Brandon Baker, the big offensive tackle out of Modern Day. Announced a commitment date. It's coming here at the end of the month. Will he be in town for this game, or will it be Louisiana Tech?
It's actually going to be this weekend. I think that's what he announced on Twitter, unless I'm saying that completely wrong. I think this weekend is the 16th, right?
Yes.
Yeah, my birthday was the 9th. Yeah. So he announced on Twitter this weekend that it was going to be September 16th, which makes sense. It's a 6:00 game. I mean, you can get guys in from all over the country, to be there in time for that game. That's always the challenge with Lincoln, just because those guys most of the time have to travel into Omaha. Then you have to kind of tack on the hour-long kind of trip from Omaha to Lincoln, and and it makes it really difficult for like an 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock start for those guys, depending on wherever they're traveling in from. But 6 o'clock start, coming from the West Coast, you're going to get there in time, and that's really a nice weekend for him to kind of get up there. But yeah, it'll be this weekend. And right now, I mean, we don't know a lot about the names of the other visitors that are going to be there. And what's going to be one of the segments of my 3 and Out though on Wednesday, because you're dancing all over it right now, is that Nebraska has probably 2 of their top remaining targets, one for each of the next 2 classes, with Brandon Baker and Alex Mansky coming in that weekend. So it's a big recruiting weekend, because there's probably, not a more important recruit on Nebraska's list on their big board than Brandon Baker, because his path to the football field is show up, and learn the offense. And that's literally what kind of talent you're talking about right there. And then of course, with Alex Mansky, he's really been, treated as that number 1 top quarterback, prospect for Nebraska on their board in the class of 2025.
Also on the offensive line, a guy we haven't heard from, I think we were supposed to by now, Grant Bricks. Any update on him and why no commitment yet?
So, yeah, Grant Bricks. Man, I tell you what, so 2 weeks ago was the last time I spoke with him. He called me, and he kind of let me know that it was going to be, in the next 3 weeks. And I told him I'm not going to call him for 2 weeks. So last night was the first night. Actually, it was the week before Labor Day. Excuse me. And I hadn't called him for 2 weeks, and I finally reached out to him last night and said, "Hey, bud, am I going to hear from you this week?" And I didn't hear anything. And I really feel like this is still a decision that he's struggling with for, reasons that people probably would maybe not necessarily agree with, but he's, he doesn't want to disappoint anybody. He doesn't want to let anybody down. He isn't looking forward to making those tough phone calls. I mean, imagine calling Nick Saban, and having to tell him no, or potentially, Rule, or Venables, tell him that he's not coming. So I can understand, that this is, the biggest decision that he's had to make in his life so far. And he's going to call some very important people that have done nothing wrong. He just is choosing to do something else than what they want him to do. And that part right there for him makes it very, very difficult. But I think he's closing in on a decision. I know some people kind of tell me that it's down to 3 schools. I'll tell you, the last time I talked to him, Alabama was still at least being a word that he was muttering. It definitely came up that he had not been to an Alabama game, even though he's talking like he doesn't want to take any more visits before he makes a decision. So I think it could be next week. I think it's going to be sometime in the next week and a half. I kind of predicted it was going to be this week. It's not looking real positive yet. I guess it's really only Monday, but maybe you'll hear something this week, but I got a feeling you'll hear something by like maybe next weekend.
We're talking with Bryan Munson of Husker Online here on our Allo VIP line, brought to you by Allo Fiber, where we understand the importance of exceptional service with local heart. Quarterback's been a big topic of conversation. You just mentioned Mansky, but the guy in the 2024 class for Nebraska, Bryan, is Daniel Kalen, who really, hasn't gotten off to the hottest of starts for Bellevue West through 4 games this season. I know you wrote a little bit about previewing the Bellevue West versus West Side game. Warriors end up taking down the Thunderbirds in a romp. What's going on at Bellevue West?
Injuries, inconsistency, looking to kind of catch that stride. I mean, you missed McMorris basically for 2 games. You bring McMorris back, and now Davon Hall is getting an MRI today on his arm. It's not been a great season just because you've had these inconsistencies with lineups, personnel, and you're looking for a defense to generate. I mean, looking for defense to make a stop, to generate some turnovers, to help the offense out a little bit. The offense is sputtering. It sounds like a familiar story with what's going on there in Lincoln a little bit with the struggling offense. But I think that smart money though is still on Bellevue West to kind of get some things going. They're just looking to kind of lock in the chemistry a little bit. And I don't know necessarily if it's not going to help, not having Davon Hall. So maybe it's not going to happen, quite as quickly as what they need it to. But yeah, they're struggling, and I think it's just because I think there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of people that are watching those guys. I can't remember the last time, or even if there's been a time where Nebraska had commitments from 3 guys on the same football team. I'll have to maybe go back and take a look at my records to see if I can find anything like that. But it's certainly an interesting, time for those guys because of the skill position, the positions that they play, the skill positions, and obviously that offense has been under a microscope all fall, all season so far.
Does it dull the shine for Nebraska at all? The fan perspective, I'm sure, is wondering, but from the coaching staff perspective, is there any sort of, what did we get ourselves into? Are we sure these are our guys, or are they still pretty confident in that it is just chemistry and they'll find their stride?
Well, I'll tell you from the comments I've read, because I run a story it's usually every Monday. Sometimes it's on Tuesdays. I mean, with Labor Day last weekend, it was a Tuesday story. So I'd like to try to get it up tonight, just depending on when the stats get done. But I know there's definitely some people that are keeping their eyes on the stats. They're wondering a little bit, about why people are underperforming, and it's not just those 3 guys. I mean, there's a number of guys that actually are underperforming, as far as this class goes. I wouldn't want to name names necessarily. I mean, but I would tell you that the Bellevue West guys are repeatedly called out, and I think that I even mentioned, like in Tunnel Talk, talking to Ja'Cory Barney when I put his stats in front of him, that he wasn't too fond of the numbers that I was showing to him. And he actually, was pretty surprised about it and said that his numbers were trash. And he's a guy that took that as a personal challenge. I know he caught at least 1 touchdown last week, but I don't know what the rest of his stats were. But I mean, I think there's a couple of guys that have some really, really, really good stats this year. Carter Nelson, Kewan Lacey. One guy, low key, I really, really like what he's doing, defensively. Carlin Jones, and what he's got going on in Bay City, Texas. He's having a really disruptive, type of season playing defensive tackle, defensive line for them. So I do think that there are some guys having some exceptional years, and I think there's some guys right now that are just kind of struggling. And then obviously there's a number of guys that are out with injuries. You're missing Preston Taumua. I was just told last week that Rex Guthrie got hurt. He's done for the season. Ian Flint is another player that nobody really understood what was kind of going on with him. And he actually caught up with me last week and he had surgery and he's out now with trying to come back by week 5, I think is what he was talking about. So you got them, and Evan Taylor tore his ACL and his MCL in the first game. I mean, it's just there's been some bad luck, and obviously, if it's not bad luck injury wise, there's some bad luck just trying to get things going production wise so far.
Last thing for you then, Bryan, on that kind of big picture. I know we're only 2 games into the Matt Rule era at Nebraska. Is it too early to question their ability to scout talent, to find those right guys for their roster, given some of the struggles of guys that are currently playing for Nebraska? Or is it too early? Is it just panic because the football team's 0-2 and everything's being called into question?
So if there is one thing to kind of feel good about, it's that the number of young guys that are seeing the football field, they have really caught my eye. And I think that that's something to feel extraordinarily good about. And I think that maybe Nebraska, or at least the staff, has an eye for the type of talent that they're looking for. They know what they're looking for, and I think what you really ran into, last week, it was a buzzsaw. 2.5 quarters, Nebraska played pretty good. There was that long throw down the far sideline going right to left that really, after that, it seemed like everything spiraled downward for Nebraska. They couldn't keep that play in front of them, and then they failed to keep a lot of plays after that in front of them, and that really challenged them the rest of the game. But I think that what Nebraska has got going right now is that they've got some young guys that are stepping up, and I think they got some other guys that you'll continue to start seeing them as the season progresses. I think that tells a very positive story to the players that are in the class, that they're going to get an early look, early in their careers. And I think that that's something to be excited about. I think that's about, playing the type of football that Matt Rule and his staff want to play. And I think that, honestly, like I said, you're not going to see it immediately that, there's a positive here from the 0-2 start, but I think that those two environments couldn't have been more difficult. It really couldn't have started out worse. Just on the road, 2 games, Deion, catching that big win at Fort Worth and carrying that momentum over into Boulder, and PJ Fleck just always seems to have something for Nebraska. But yeah, I think that the team in the long run could be better off for what just happened to them. It's just a matter of kind of using those as learning circumstances and learning situations and moving on.
Bryan, plenty more we could ask you, but we know you're working hard, plenty on your other burners. So appreciate you finding time to fit us in. What's up from you on 3 that people can go check out that we didn't talk about?
I do have some updates coming. I got a couple guys out there in Duncanville. I haven't run their stories yet. I ran Cortez Mills, 2025 wide receivers coming in for the Michigan game. I ran that yesterday. And then I think what we're going to start seeing here is we're going to start seeing more and more names trickle out about who the visitors are going to be on Saturday night. So keep it tuned there. You can go up there to the football recruiting drop down, click on the visitors tab, and make sure you're looking through the various years, because they won't all just pop up, if they're coming in. You got to go through the 24, 25, 26 drop down. So something to kind of remember on that. But as I get that information, I'll be dropping top level threads on Red Sea Scrolls, as well as updating the database.
There you go. Go check it out. Husker Online. Go find it. Bryan, as always, appreciate the time. Have a good rest of your week, man.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.